Hello, I'm Keyoka, the awkward black nomad. I'm a writer, I'm a dog mom, and I travel solo. My channel is for me to tell you my amazing stories traveling around to 10 countries with my two dogs. And also, I bring other black travelers or just black people who live abroad to come and share their stories about living internationally or bopping around the world. If that sounds like something you are interested in, like the video. And I see some of y'all are coming into the room liking the video, and I love to see that. But subscribe to the channel if you aren't subscribed. Click the notification button so you are reminded whenever I go live, and drop down in the comment section. I'm gonna bring my lovely guests up here, but you know, black folk, we speak when we come into the room. So tell us hi. If you have any questions for our guests today, put a Q in front of your question so I see it. And let's get started. Hello, 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 hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Everyone, this is Tanisha. Tanisha, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself? Where are you currently?
I'm currently in Paris, France, in my studio apartment.
I love to see that. like,
Yeah.
um, and okay, so we're gonna get into the journey, but we're gonna get into the journey because you decided at 40 to move to France.
Yes, I was actually, how old was I? I was 48 when I moved to France.
48.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I was 48. I was 48. Um, it was a place that I always wanted to move to. I said in 2018 that I wanted to move here. It took me a minute. It took me a minute to get here. But January 2nd, 2023 is when I officially made the move. 6 months before that, I moved here kind of like part time. So, and had been traveling here, coming here, a lot of visits. So it was official January 2nd, 2023.
Okay, that's amazing to take that big step. Um, I mean, at any stage in life to take that big step, but especially when you're already, I would say, more established in life, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, it was a decision that did not come lightly. I was literally, like, I don't want to say I felt like I do it or not, but I felt like everything was lining up to where it was a good reason for me to go. I felt that if I went and didn't like it, I could always move back. That was my feeling.
Yes. Yes, and I also come from a family where people always tell me that I can come home. So that's
Yes.
really helpful.
Yes, listen.
Like, you
Listen
could
here.
always come home, right?
Exactly.
And that's with
Exactly. My
anything.
mom my mama would tell me like, yeah, you can always come home. Uh I happen to have adult children, and for me, it was important that they were settled. And
Mhm.
so my youngest had finished undergrad, and I was like, you know what, Mama's about to be out. So
You were like, bye, y'all. See y'all.
yeah, pretty much like y'all got it now.
Where are
So
you originally from?
originally, I'm from Detroit.
Okay.
From Detroit, but lived in Atlanta for a very long time. But yeah, Detroit is where my roots are. Is where all my family is from.
Okay, beautiful. And where was your first solo trip? When was your first solo trip?
My first solo trip was to Paris actually in 2017. I came to Paris in the fall of 2017, fell in love with it. Paris had always been a place that I had wanted to go. I'm really into fashion and design. And so, just as a teenager, I would be, reading about Paris. Like, it was like this was a place where fashion was, and it was Paris and it was Milan. So for me, I just kind of focused on Paris, and I thought, well, maybe one day I would love to go visit. And so I never quite got that chance to visit. I was raising my children, had done some international travel, but had not gotten to Paris yet. So I had the opportunity. 2017 was a rough year for me. I lost my husband of 21 years, and I was literally at a point to where I was like, now is the time for me to start over. What do I want my life to look like? Travel was already an important part of my late spouse's and our lives. And I said, you know what? I've always wanted to go to Paris. Now is the time. I booked a flight, got on the plane, solo, and I had the time of my life. I really did. I had a really good time. And I kept coming back. Like I kept coming back. So
Mm. And I mean, I think too, like when you're used to traveling with a person or even like with your family, it's they're like a security blanket, right? They're like the safety. And then when you're by
indeed.
yourself, it's like, what do I do? Almost what do I do in this situation? Like, oh, I have to go out alone now. I have to have dinner alone. I have to have coffee alone. I have to walk around. Or, if you're someone who plans a lot, or maybe the other person is, it's almost like you can fall back on them to plan things, you
He
know?
was a planner. He was a planner. All I had to do was just show up. That was all I had to do. So I now suddenly had to plan everything, figure out stuff that he would normally do. So all of our travel arrangements, getting there, what we're doing, I'm very much like, okay, just give me the itinerary and I'll be there type of person.
Right.
So I just had to show up and that was it. So now suddenly I had to do everything, like booking my flight, figuring out what I wanted to do, all of that stuff. So that was kind of one of the reasons why. So it was my first international trip, and I just had a really good time. It was like the beginning of my international trip adventures, and I've gone to a lot of places since then. Probably, I think I've been to like 30 countries overall, and not all of that is alone was solo, but solo traveling is different. I think that it takes a certain personality to do it. It takes a bit of fearlessness, not being afraid, figuring out stuff right as you go along. Because travel, like things can change from a moment's notice. So it takes like an adventurous spirit, but I do think that all of us have it within us, right? To develop that sense of travel. If we want to go, because my thing was I was not waiting on anybody to go. I knew that if I waited on somebody to go with me, it was going to be forever. Like it would be like years before I got a chance to do what I wanted to do. I'm not the type of person to wait around on people either. So it was like, I'm going, and I had a great time.
Yes, I love that for you. And I think also too, like, so for me, when I started traveling solo, I didn't necessarily, like, I would have never described myself as courageous or adventurous.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, at all. But
Why?
I
But why? I see. But why though? Because I feel like for a person to travel alone,
mm,
right? A lot of times it does take being adventurous and being courageous. You didn't think it did, or you just
I so the thing is I think in my case specifically, my journey helped me discover parts of myself I didn't know were there. So like I can be adventurous, I can be fearless, but because I had never challenged myself to do those things, it took
Mhm.
me actually like being abroad by myself and just jumping instead of like thinking about jumping, just doing it. And
Okay.
I was like, oh, actually, I am very adaptable. Like I'm very flexible. I'm very, and that's why I tell people like on my channel, I say to people like you are afraid to do something and it's just because you haven't done it yet. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, fear
Exactly.
is usually baseless.
Yeah. Usually, it usually is.
Usually.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's a broad statement. Usually fear is
Right.
baseless.
Right. Right. Right.
you
Right.
know. But I see you guys in the chat. Hi, good morning. Zanya, hi. She was on my
Good
channel too,
morning.
Nomadic Islanders. Khadijah, hello everybody, good morning. Hi, Luxury Bucket List. Hey girl. She says, when I first went to Paris, I cried. I also love fashion, love Paris, but I prefer Rome to Milan. So we may so we may settle here instead.
Yes, I love it.
Hmm. She also says, my condolences. Yes, we're sorry about the loss of your husband.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. I no, I don't want to say that. Wait. um so could you talk to us a little bit about the moment you decided to make that move, that you needed a change in your life?
I think so. 2017 came, did the first trip. I came back like 2 months later. And I think that was that December. And I think the beginning of 2018, I was just like, you know what? I've been here twice. I liked the feeling of it. It's kind of like when I went home. At that time, it was in Atlanta, right? Home was Atlanta. I was sad. I was like, I really do miss just the environment, the feeling. There's some places you go in this world where you just know that you fit in, or you really like it. And I've been to many other places, and I just did not have that feeling. I looked at other countries. At one point, I just knew I was moving to Mexico. I knew I was going to Tulum. Went to Tulum, visited, and I had been to Mexico before, but not to Tulum. And it was all right. It was okay, but it just wasn't the spot. Went to Colombia. I love Colombia. I went to Cali, Colombia, which is like where the Afro Colombians are, not far off the coast. Beautiful, had a great time. Um, Colombia was just okay for me. It wasn't maybe number three, it just wasn't number one. So it's like I gave myself time to like go to other places to see if I felt the same way. And I didn't feel the same way. Like I
Mm.
felt that again in 2018 Paris was the spot, and I just felt like that feeling never left for me. It never left. And I kept coming back, and the only outcome.
Not my
You good? Oh, you're I can't hear you. Okay, what happened? Hello?
no, I muted myself.
Oh,
Sorry. I was saying
oh, you
continue.
did.
Sorry,
Okay,
sorry.
okay, okay,
There was
okay,
neighbors.
okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
So, what was I saying? The only, I felt really good. Like I would again come here a lot. I would come to Paris a lot. Every single time I was missing it. I love the environment. I love the culture. I love the dating experience. That was amazing. It fit who I was. And so this was the place. And the only time I did not come was during the pandemic when they would not allow Americans to come here. So other than that, like as soon as they let us come back over here, I was on the plane. Okay. I was on the plane. And I just it kind of grew from there. So
Yeah, I love that. I haven't, I say this a lot on my channel. I haven't found Bay yet. Like, I haven't found
okay.
a country that feels like I want to wife them up. You know,
Okay. Okay.
I still feel like I want to date
Okay.
the countries. I still feel like I want to just be out in the streets with the take them out a little bit,
Right. Right.
wine
Right.
and dine 'em.
Side chicks or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Right.
I'm
Right. Right.
probably,
Right.
I'm,
You
yeah,
situationship. Situationship. Okay.
all over the
Okay.
world, situationships
Right.
all over the world. But I love that you had that sense of home in Paris. I think that's a
You
beautiful,
know,
yeah.
it's like what I always say. Some people love it, or it's like Paris is like a love hate relationship. People either love it or they hate it. There is like no middle ground.
Mm.
So I happen to love it, but I tell everybody like you have to find your happy place. For me, Paris was mine. I mean, I love traveling anyway, but Paris was my happy place. It was that one place where every time I left, I did not want to go home, and when I was at home, I was dreaming of Paris. So,
I love that. I love that. And I'll say this too. So like I'm from originally from New Orleans. And so
okay.
people were like, "Oh, you're in Europe. You need to go to France. You need to go to France." Paris is
Yep.
nothing like New Orleans. Paris is nothing like New Orleans. Now, and I even went to Orleans because apparently that's the namesake.
Yep.
Also nothing like New Orleans. But Toulouse is like New Orleans.
Really? See, I've never been to Toulouse. I have not been yet, but it is on my places to go.
Going to,
And it's funny because I love New Orleans. New Orleans is
mhm.
one of my favorite cities in the U.S. Honestly, it's nowhere like New Orleans for real.
Yeah.
It's nowhere.
There's
So,
nowhere like New Orleans. But but I do get that, like I will say, in the sense that like France in general reminded me of being home, like back home in New Orleans. There were moments where I was like, this is deja vu. Like I'm it feels like I'm walking it feels like I'm walking in my home city, you know? So I think when it kind of like when the pieces click, that's a really
Yep.
good moment in time. But I do want to rewind a little bit. So you said you have grown children. Well, let me tell you this. If my mama had woken up one day and said that she was going to leave the country, that she was going to abandon me, go to a foreign land where I couldn't get to her, if I had an emergency, um,
It would be a
she would,
problem.
there would be problems because what do you mean? Your life is
Right.
for me.
Right. Miss Ma'am, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Where are you going? Or am I coming with you? Like so what so how did your children react?
Okay, so it's so funny. So I remember telling them like, y'all, like I could actually I think I want to move here one day. And they kind of at first I think blew me off, honestly, like she's not serious. But I think I kept talking about it.
Mhm.
So I have three kids. My son is 27, my daughter is 25, and then my youngest is 24, right? And so, they were all in the process, of, in college, getting their professional lives together and everything, starting their careers and stuff. So I think they kind of tuned me out, like, yeah, 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 we know, but I was obviously always here, right? So they knew I liked it. But I think what did it for me is that my youngest daughter, the summer of 2022 is when I told her, like, look, I'm going to actually do this. My son was like, he was not surprised. He's like, I thought you would have been gone. My middle daughter didn't really, she was like, okay. But my youngest daughter, she was the one that was like, oh, I just thought you were just saying that because you were talking about it, but I didn't see you actually doing anything about it. Like
Mm.
she kept hearing me talk, but I wasn't making any plans. So she was a little surprised. Interestingly enough, she came to Paris with me on a scouting trip, spent a month here in August of 2022, her and I. And originally the plan was that I would move here. And I offered to her, I was like, well, do you want to come with me? Because she was beginning grad school and it was a program that she could do online that first year. She, we came together. Paris is not her thing. She does not really like it. But that's fine. So she got a chance to come here for a month, hang out. She actually liked some other places we went to, like London and Amsterdam and Belgium, a little bit better. But I think my kids, their reaction was just, it was mixed, it was varied, but they knew that this was something that I was probably going to do.
Mm. So they knew to take you seriously.
Yeah, the youngest one didn't. She just was like, okay, whatever. But I think she had to see me actually, like, once I, you know, finalized some plans, once I, had my ticket, once this is where I'm going to be, kind of a thing. She knew that I was serious about it.
Mm. The luxury bucket list says my daughter will come visit.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
yeah. Yes, and that's my thing. It's like I'm in a tiny little apartment here, but I'm like my home is it's my kids. My home is always open, and my youngest is here with me over the summer. So it's like, listen, you always have a space wherever I am in the world. So it's always open.
I
They
love
will
that.
come visit.
Mm. And has I mean, you said you traveled a lot before actually moving, but do you feel like you taking that courage to leave the US has inspired your children? Do they also want to follow in your path? Are they curious about it?
I think they are. So my son, he has said that he does want to move one day, relocate internationally. My middle child, my middle daughter, Ashley, she's kind of thinking about it. My youngest daughter is also thinking about it too. So I think now, and the conversations I'm having with them are all different with who is in office and all of that. And we
Mm.
literally had a family call last week, like, listen, figure out where you may want to go. Like, have some places that you may, if you have to leave, figure out where you might want to go. So I think I'm hoping that they see me leaving and see the journey that I've been through. And it hasn't always been easy. It's not easy to pick up and leave. It can come with some challenges, right? But I hope that they see that and just think that one day, if they decide to go, they can do it. Like their mom did it, their mama did it, so they can do it
Right.
too.
Right, like laying that foundation.
Yeah.
I think you speak for a lot of families right now, especially in the travel space. Like I'm also having conversations with my family like, this is the year y'all need to get passports. I'm not playing with y'all. Like
Yeah.
I'm not playing with
I'm not even playing.
y'all.
I'm
No,
not,
it's
it's
not
like
a
I'm not
game.
playing.
It's
I even
not a
with
game.
my kids, I asked them. I said, "Listen, when are y'all passports expiring?" Because I think they got theirs expire in like 2026 or 2020.
Mhm.
I couldn't remember, and I was like, "When do y'all passports expire?" So it's having those conversations. It's like if you don't have your passport, you need to get it. If it's close to expiring, make sure you got enough time on there. Make sure that you are doing what you need to do in case you have to make a move.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like being the first person to leave has opened a door that this could be a possibility. Like
Yeah.
if we need to go, somebody has already done it in the family, so we can kind of guide the footsteps a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier, as opposed to people who don't have any connection to moving abroad. Like, people in New Orleans stay there. They don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It was big for us to even move states. So to think about leaving the country, a lot of people can't make that jump mentally, not even
You are
considering
absolutely right.
financially. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm from Detroit, right? And people from Detroit kind of like New Orleans in that they don't they don't really go many places. I mean, not everybody, but there's a large amount of people who just they're there and they don't travel. Even some of my close family members, they don't go, they will not travel, will not get on a plane, will not do any of that.
Yeah.
So sometimes it takes that one person to be like the trailblazer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Um, so if you feel comfortable, can we talk about how you financially prepared to make the move?
Sure. Financially, it was like I began paying off debt, right? I began saving aggressively, just getting things in place. Um, it was an expense. There were expenses that I knew I was going to have. So I knew that it was going to cost me to, for example, get an immigration attorney, which I have. I knew that it was going to cost me a certain amount to get a visa here in France, which I have. So I just began kind of putting things in place, really aggressively saving, like not shopping as much, right? And really thinking about it like, okay, I can go out, go to all these restaurants, do whatever, but that's going to take me further away from my goal. So I just became really kind of committed to doing what I needed to do to prepare me to leave. Also, just getting rid of stuff, right? Like I mean, I downsized like 2 years before, maybe 3 years before I left. So that was one thing. So it was like getting rid of stuff. That was a big that honestly was really challenging for me because it was like I had all this stuff. Um and I had like a storage unit, which made no I mean I spent like so much money on the storage unit. Like I do not recommend it at all. But at a storage unit for like 3 years because again I downsized from our family home to like a 2 bedroom apartment, and like lowered my expenses. So it was like I was doing the things I needed to do. I didn't necessarily know that it was going to be for that reason, but everything really worked out.
Listen, when you talked about repurposing your money, so saying like, listen, I could buy a pair of shoes, but that is also a train ride from one city to the next. Or thinking about it like that, I do that all the time. I'm like, I could go out to dinner with my friends, but that's a
Yeah.
little bit of a plane ticket right there. That's
I th- I think in terms of flights, I'm like, wait a minute now, how
yes,
much is this? That's a flight somewhere. So
yes.
I'm not going to do it.
How long would you say the preparation took, just in general?
Okay, so it I really had so I had the particular opportunity. What happened at the time was, even though this was somewhere I said I wanted to go, I'll be totally upfront. So I knew this is where I wanted to live. The person I was dating at the time was like, okay, do you want to come? Come on. And so once that offer was on the table, I I went back and forth in my head about it, like, should I go? Should I not?
Oh, the person was
Um,
in. Sorry, the person was in France already.
He's right here in Paris. So that made things a little bit easier for me. I didn't have to necessarily worry about where to live. That one thing alone was a big thing that was off of my plate.
Mm.
So for me, it was more so a matter of once I made the decision that this is what I was going to do, it was then just kind of getting things in a row. So I would say maybe like May of that year, I decided, and I had to quickly get things together, right? And by August, that was when my scouting trip was, spending 1 month there. So I moved in phases. So it was like spent a month there from August to September. Everything went well. Then it was like I came back to Atlanta, and then I spent October through December in Paris. So that was like my second stage. So things went well on the second stage. And then had to come back home, apply for the visa in the US, right? And then January I was out. So it was a staged process. Um, Even though my partner at that time, like, I didn't have to worry about where I was going to live, I was still looking like, okay, you know, I knew what I wanted. Like, I wanted an apartment in the city, and he did not live in the city. He lived in the suburbs of Paris.
Mm.
So it was like I was still going everything I had to do that I would have had to do alone. I still had to kind of do. I just had a little bit more time. So the pressure was off of me in terms of like having to find a place to go immediately. I already had that. So it really was a matter of making the decision, getting rid of the mental decision was the biggest thing for me, like making that decision to, like, okay, I'm actually going to go. And then it was like getting rid of my stuff, um you know um doing what I need to do financially. All that stuff was already kind of taken care of, so I was just kind of like redirecting stuff, if that makes sense. So after that point, it was like smooth sailing.
Okay. I'm taking notes as you're talking. That's why I keep looking down. Nomadic Islander says, yes, we do that too. We are like $50. That's 7 bowls of ramen in Japan. Okay.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, that part.
Yes. And also you unlocked a new strategy. So basically, if you feel like you want to move to a country, start looking for a partner. Start just
Listen,
that'll
listen
hasten
here.
put some fire under
It
yourself.
it makes things a lot easier. I will say that. Okay, it makes things a lot easier.
Well, because like you said this, having a place to stay while you look for your own place, while you figure out if you want to be in that
Yep.
city, things like that, I think are really beneficial. You said your boyfriend was in the suburbs, so like for if you're a person who's never been to Paris, it can be there's a lot of people in Paris, like in the like
Paris is crowded.
Paris is crowded.
Paris is full.
Paris
It's
is
full.
crowded. Okay. So like figuring out, okay, are you a city mouse? Or are you a suburb mouse? Like which kind of mouse are you? Because Paris is a little
See,
packed.
I thought I could be a suburban mouse. I thought I could. Uh, but it was a different experience. So the thing about it was, so I was like an hour and 30 minutes away by train from Paris. That's not that long, but it's not, maybe like hour 15. It's not that long, but it's far enough.
Mm.
Where he lived, no expats were there. It was a bit isolating. Everything I love to do is in Paris. So the suburbs are like, typical suburbs. They're for families, they're quiet, they're clean. And little things that I wanted to do, like going out or doing whatever, I had to always plan it around the train. I don't drive here. So I went from having two vehicles in Atlanta to now taking the train and the metro. So it was like it didn't fit my lifestyle. So that's what I had to really think about. Like, okay, I moved halfway around the world. I need to make sure that I'm in an area that I actually want to be in, that's conducive to my lifestyle. So that's when I kind of make the decision. I made the decision to find my own place. But before I moved over, I tried to get an apartment and it did not work out at all. So I had to kind of start over. The apartment process here is grueling. It's grueling.
Really?
And it's very competitive. You know, I'm used to, I mean, in Atlanta, you want an apartment, you go online, right? You know, go on websites, do a virtual tour, you know, you call the place, schedule an appointment, boom, bam, that's it. It's not like that here. So it's there are more people looking for homes than there are actually homes available. So it's a very tight rental market. And I didn't realize that I would need all this stuff. Like I would need to have a guarantor. Like your credit score does not work here. They don't care what your FICO score is. It does not work. You even offering, hey, I can pay 6 months to a year in advance. That's guess what? That's illegal. Not it's not quite legal. So um, that part of it is probably the hardest thing for anybody that's looking to move to Paris. It's either Paris or like the south of France. Those are the two most competitive markets. Everywhere else is kind of like maybe halfway normal, but here in Paris, the south of France, is very, very competitive.
Oh, wow. So then how were you able to find your current place?
So that was an experience, an adventure. There were a lot of calls. I would call, he would call. It's weird because you see the advertisement and you call, like it's like what? So you have pick up the phone and call. People would either not answer, or I was told by one place like I don't want to rent to you because you don't have French income. So it's all those things. So it was like I ended up being frustrated, looking for a long time, like a couple months, looking, didn't really find anything, wasn't getting any results. So Airbnb is always an option. And at one point, I did do an Airbnb, but Airbnb is really expensive by Parisian standards. It's not really something that most Parisians are, or people in France are not going on Airbnb to find a rental. That's for tourists, right? So I ended up going on this one website and it's called morningcroissant.com. And it's like a competitor to Airbnb. So imagine Airbnb, but they charge a rental fee, a reservation fee rather.
Okay.
So you're able to go on there and it was super easy. There are so many scams out here. I almost got scammed too. So it's like having to be really careful with people, things like Facebook Marketplace, which, there are all these advertisements on Facebook Marketplace. Most of them are scams here in Paris. So whenever you contact somebody, you see something, they're like, "Oh, I will send your information to my." Nope, that's a red flag. Like, nope, nope, nope. I don't know. Mm-mm. Never. It's like never send any documents to people you don't know. Your dossier, which is your file, which is like your employment information, your who you are, your status. That's really important to have here. So it's like you do not want to send that information to people that you don't know, that are not verified.
Oh, wow. So then how long, you said a few months, but how could you give an estimate of how long it actually took to find a place that was reputable and would rent to you? It's not illegal?
Yeah, it's technically, well, we have what housing laws in the US, right? They don't have those same housing laws here. They can and do discriminate. And so there were a few cases to where I feel like, when my former partner called, I think that they were like, oh, this sounds like, a black voice on the phone, and no, it's not available. So that happened too. So
Mm.
it's one of those things. There is, like everywhere, there is segregation, right? I mean, we don't like to talk about it, but it's true here as well. So it took October of that year is when I tried to get this other apartment. And I'm still sad I didn't get that apartment. Because they wanted to rent to me, and the problem was I needed a guarantor. I didn't know that at the time. So that would have taken, it would have taken about 4 or 5 days. And it's so competitive, that apartment is like, it's gone. You just don't have time. You have to come ready. So I would say, I began looking as soon as I would say I began looking in like February of that year, and then I found a place, in like two months. By April, I had a place.
Okay.
And
So I
so with
so I was gonna say if somebody is preparing to move to Paris, they should really financially plan for not being able to find an apartment the first few months.
Well, they need to be aware that either they need to have an apartment before they come,
Okay.
okay? Because again, my situation was a little bit different, or they need to be prepared to have like an Airbnb, something temporary. You really need to be on the ground here. If you are in the US looking for an apartment here, it's probably not going to work.
Mm.
And you're also probably going to be more open to scams. You really need to be here on the ground, because if someone says, "Okay, I can show you the apartment tomorrow," like, what are you going to do if you're in New York? Like, I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't go, but it'll be easier if you're already here. In the meantime, what people can do is there are some co-living, spaces where you can live with, now it's with other people, but it's an option, a short-term option. You can do Airbnb. You can do, there are a couple other sites that you can go on to try to find a rental. So there are some options. Some of them are going to be a bit, expensive.
Wow. And what is a, I'm sorry if you said this already, but what is a guarantor in this context? Like to
So
validate your.
in this context, it's like a cosigner. So again, your my credit score in the U.S. does not make a difference at all. So basically you are contracting with a company that is saying, if you don't pay your rent, this company will pay the rent to your property owner.
Mhm.
And so you're going to have to show your paycheck stubs, your W 2s, your work contract letter, your bank, all of that good stuff, right? All the financial stuff. They're going to want to see to make sure you're a viable candidate. It's either that, or you have to have like a co-signer. And I don't know any French co-signers. I don't have anybody to co-sign for me. So not here in France, but
Mm.
they have to promise that if you don't pay, they will. So either you go through a
Crazy.
company or you go through a person.
Crazy.
Yep.
Crazy. Okay. Interesting information.
It's entirely different. And see, I didn't know this going in. That's why I didn't get that one apartment. Because I was just so happy that they were going to rent to me. And then it was like, okay, well, where's your guarantor? Because in their minds, you are not from France, right? So if you don't pay, how am I going to get paid? So
Mm.
that's why you need to have a guarantor, but not it's not just for expats. Even people here in France also get guarantors as well, to increase the likelihood that they will get rented to. So it's across the board, but it's a function because it's so competitive here. So you stand out with one, because you can imagine, if you are a property owner, am I going to go with the person who doesn't have a guarantor? Probably not. I mean, the housing laws here are entirely different. So, in the US, depending upon which state you're in, you'll get evicted and kicked out if you don't pay your rent, right? In like 7 to 10 days or 30. It just depends on where you are. It's not like that here. So people are really cautious about who they rent to. They want to make sure you can pay the rent, because they have a hard time getting people out. So that's part of it as well.
Can I ask the race of your ex?
He is French African, so he's from the Ivory Coast.
Okay. So I've dated an Ivorian. But
Okay.
so um so you think that they were able to tell, so even though he speaks French, you think they were able to
Hmm.
tell like, oh, this is a black voice.
Yeah, I mean, just like
Okay.
over the phone, we have a certain inflection, right? We
Mm.
speak English, right? You can tell like the bass or the tone of our voice.
Yeah.
You can tell a lot of times that, okay, this person is not named Karen or Chad, right?
Well,
You
yeah.
you just can tell. So they and we sound different no matter where we
Mm.
are. We sound so.
Interesting, interesting. So then in France, discrimination is alive and well. Got it.
Oh,
No matter, even if
absolutely.
you
I,
speak
w- I would
French.
tell I would tell anybody. I mean, this is the OG colonizer country. Like, never forget. Like, I never
Mhm.
forget that. The difference here is that racism will likely not kill me. That is a major difference. The difference here also is that um, I feel like in the U.S., white supremacy is built into the fabric and of the culture of the country.
Mm.
So that's another difference. I will never say that racism does not exist here, because it absolutely does. And I also recognize that my experience as a Black American woman is different than like my former partner's experience, right? As a French African man. It's very, very different. The one thing people often think, like, that Paris is, I mean, you look at, the Eiffel Tower, you look at these shows and programs, and you don't typically see us. But France colonized like all these African countries, and those people are here. So it is eye opening, and my experiences, again, are very different as an American. In my neighborhood, I'm known as the American. They don't necessarily say Black American. That's how I call myself, right? It's like I am country first almost and race second. But when people look at me, they don't, until I start speaking, they don't know where I'm coming from. As soon as I start speaking, the it shifts. And so I'm always aware of that, and I will call it out in my elementary French. But people think a certain way of Americans because, for the most part, we bring money to the table. We do bring certain habits, and there are a lot of people who also don't like Americans. So all of those things are kind of a part of it.
You said so many things I want to talk about. This might be a part two conversation. Okay, I want to ask this question not for me, but for the people that's going to be in my comment section later on.
Okay.
Why would you then choose to relocate to a colonizer country as opposed to an African nation?
For me, as opposed to an African nation, this I've been to. Okay, so let me back up. I just went to South Africa over the summer, right? That was my first time actually in Africa. I had trips planned in like what 2020 to Ghana, but the pandemic, or the panini as I like to call it, happened. So some of that didn't happen. That trip did not happen. So for me, I went with where I was comfortable going. Would South Africa or like Rwanda or Kenya be on the list at some point? I don't know. For me personally, the distance was a deal breaker. I need to be somewhere where I'm like no more than 8 to 10 hours away from the US. A flight to get back home takes me 8 hours, a direct flight. I personally do not want to be in areas that are further than that. So, for example, Thailand is going to be off the limits for me. That's going to be, I'm not going to be able to do it. Um, I would love if the continent of Africa would be, if it was an easier way to travel. Right now, for a variety of reasons, it's not. It's difficult to get from, for example, if you're trying to go from Ghana to the US, that's going to take you a little bit. So for me, my window of where I want to go is going to be limited, because again, I don't want to be on a plane for a day and a half or a day. I just don't want to do that. I want to be able to get to the US in like a work day if I have to.
Yes.
So
I agree
that
with
cuts
that.
that's
All
going to
of
cut
that.
out a lot of places for me.
I agree with all of that. Travelmatic said that's what I love about traveling abroad. They see nationality and not ethnicity. He also said something else that I will not put on the screen because I don't want no smoke. Um, But yes, I think realizing that you have access to privilege that you don't have in the US is very eye opening. Um,
Yep.
Whether or
Yep.
not you coined up,
Yep.
there's an assumption that I think it's there's an assumption that Americans have a lot of money, but also that we are frivolous with our money, so that we'll be more likely to give it to you as a local.
Yeah, we have more disposable income.
Yeah.
So even and that's around the world, like even here. If I look at the average salary here in France, the average salary is about $3,900 a month.
Mm,
Okay. So 90% of people make under $4,000 a month. And as an American, with inflation, the cost of living, rent is renting, right? Mortgages are mortgaging.
yeah.
It is expensive. And so a lot of people make above that amount. So if you're able to take that amount and come here, your income category totally changes. That's not true in every place. I mean, like for example, if I were to take that amount and if I want to move to Dubai, for example, then yeah, I'm not going to be balling out. If I want to go to Mauritius, I'm not going to be balling out. If I want to go to Seychelles, yeah, I'm. That's probably going to be very, very low. So I looked at all of those things when I was figuring out where I wanted to go, where my money would last me the longest and would stretch the furthest.
Yeah. There are people listening to this that are like, I could do $3,900 a month.
And
if I
see,
keep my
see,
if I keep my US salary. They're like, hmm.
on you on U.S. salary, that's the thing. On U.S. salary, on U.S. salary. So again, 10% of people here make over that amount. It's like the opposite, right? Like that's not a quote unquote whole lot of money. Um, by some standards, right? So it's like people automatically assume, they're watching Emily in Paris and they're watching all these shows and they're looking at people going to the top of the Eiffel Tower and they're looking at tourist stuff. But I promise you, my expenses here are anywhere from 30 to 50% lower than they would be in the US. And people have to realize too that I'm not healthcare is something that I'm barely paying for. Healthcare is there's a small cost, but it is I'm not paying anywhere near what I paid in the US for healthcare.
Oh yeah. And even if you are paying for healthcare, you're like afraid to go to the doctor. Like,
Exactly, exactly. So a doctor appointment here, let me just reference a doctor appointment here cost for the most part people are paying about $25, 25 to 40, I'm sorry, euros to go to the doctor. You do not get a super bill, okay, afterwards. Whatever the price is the price, and it's clearly labeled, this is the price, you pay it, and then you leave, and then you get, if you're a part of the healthcare plan here, you get 20% of that back. So there are no surprises. There are no like, okay, this person is out of deductible, this is out of network. There's none of that. Um, I pay a little bit more because I prefer to go to an English speaking physician. And so that's about 80 to 100 euros. So it just depends, but that's a good example of how cheap healthcare can be and how the model in the US is broken, and how when you go to other countries, you see how affordable healthcare can be.
yeah, yeah. Anasa says, I agree. Colonialism, and racism is global, but Tanisha says it's about where it's most dangerous for Black people. Exactly. You don't have to worry about losing your life because
I
somebody
mean,
likes you.
these past 3 weeks have shown us, right? Like, honestly, I have people, family members, friends, and I stay in close contact with my friends here. Even though it's harder for me to make friends here culturally due to cultural differences. I'm still in contact with my folks in the US. And so often. And so I've been getting, so many phone calls and just texts. They have anxiety, they're overwhelmed. I mean, I feel stressed too, okay?
Yeah.
My mama is there, my brothers and sisters, my children are there. So it's one of those things of where I will never say that France is perfect. I will never say that racism does not exist here. It is just very different. But when I'm here, this was one of the first places that I felt that I could just exist. I didn't have to. A police officer pulls me over. I don't have to. I was in a cab one day, and a police officer pulled the cab driver over, and it was like an Uber. I had a sense of anxiety and stress because I don't know what's getting ready to happen. And it was a plainclothes police officer. And I'm just looking like, what's going on here? It's a totally different experience. And so I think they were mainly checking to make sure the person had their papers on them. But they literally checked in 10 minutes, we were gone. I can't say the same thing if I were in back home.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too that like because this is our normal, that we don't realize
Yes.
there's something wrong with it. Like for me, I was in Europe for about 15 or so months, and then coming
Okay.
back to the US, I just it's I came to terms with a lot of things that like being in the US, being in Texas specifically, I'm
Mhm.
actually afraid. like you said, that feeling of getting pulled over. I remember so when I was traveling, my little sister had my car, and she of course didn't do any maintenance on it, didn't, take care of it. So when I got back, big sister got the big bill. But my
Yep.
light, she didn't change out my headlights. So I was driving
Okay.
home one night and my headlights turned off, and the cop pulled me over, and I was really scared. And I was like, why am I
Mhm.
so like I haven't done anything wrong. The car
Yep.
is it covered, there's nothing wrong with the registration. I'm the driver. It's a even if he gives me a ticket, it would be a minor ticket. But
Yep.
I really felt like fear in my physically in my body, and I was like, that is not okay, because in any other place in the world, police officers have been friendly to me. They've been joking with me. They've been happy to help. They are not intimidating. They don't like make me feel like I've done something wrong just for asking a question. It's a
Exactly.
real issue in this country, and I think one of the reasons why I started this channel is because I want more black people. Like I want black people in my hometown who have never been outside of Louisiana to see that there is a different world out there, and that there are people who are nicer to you but also who are not dangerous to you.
That part.
Yeah.
That part. That part. I think it's, and that's the important part. I think that it's important to travel. It's important to go to different places. If you want to go to Ghana, go. If you want to go to Nigeria, go. If you want to go wherever it is that you want to go, and let's stop putting limits on where we go. That's just another form of our trauma response.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some people who look like us who all the time want to tell people where they should go or where they shouldn't go, or you shouldn't go here because there are colonizers here. Let us, primarily black women, who are out here, who are the fastest growing category of people traveling, right? Let
Period.
us go, period. Let us go where we want to go without the judgment. Because a lot of times people who tell you don't go here, or why are you going over there to Europe? Why are you going over there with those white folks? Most of the time they haven't gone anywhere. Because if they did, they wouldn't have. Travel opens your life. It broadens your horizons, right? And there's nothing else that I know that can do that. It's travel. So I'm just an advocate of, like you mentioned, getting out there, exploring beyond where you live, your hometown, your home state, your home country.
Definitely. 100%. I There's so much I want to talk to you about. I don't know if we gonna get through all of it today. Oh my god! Because I wrote, even as you were talking, I've been writing things down that isn't on my initial list. So
Okay.
we gonna have to go. We have to figure it out. Okay,
Part two. Part
right.
two.
A part two, right? But okay, I'm trying to pull it back. you basically need to know French is what I'm getting, what I'm gathering. Like you either need to have somebody who speaks French fluently or you need to be learning French actively to navigate being living there. That's what it sounds like.
Yes and no. You need to come here knowing the polite words, but you would know that in any language. If you were to go to Mexico, you would know how to say, ideally, if you want to be respectful and polite, right? You would know how to say hello and thank you, right, in Spanish. The same thing is here. If you are here, you want to know your polite words, hello, please, and thank you. You want to remember always, if you are beginning an interaction with someone, to always greet them, bonjour. But it's the same way in the US. If I come up to you, don't know you on the street, and I ask you a question, and I just ask you the question, if I don't say excuse me or whatever, you're going to think I'm rude, right? It's the same way here, but maybe on a different level. So you need to know, I'm still learning French. I'm still learning French. So I'm not fluent. A lot of people where I am in Paris speak English. It depends on where you are in France. If you're in some of the smaller areas, no, they're going to speak French exclusively, and you're not going to find people speaking English. If you are in in major international cities, there is going to be more of a mix. Will my life be better? Would my life be better speaking French? Yes, it would, because that is a barrier when you're trying to make friends, and that has been something that I'm taking lessons, trying to learn the language. It's something that you should do, but you can get by in Paris without knowing French fluently.
So is it because in my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, French people can speak English,
Oh
but
yeah, they can speak
they don't
English. They can.
but they don't
They
want
absolutely
to.
They absolutely can. A lot know English and they don't want to. And also, a lot of times they don't get a chance to practice. They learn during their like depending upon their age. If they're like 40 and under, they've learned it in school, but they may not be able, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? That
Mhm.
applies to English as well. So a lot of them have a baseline. Also, because the French language is so difficult, a lot of people are like, oh, I can't speak English. But when I talk to them, I'm like, your English is better than my French. So it's how they view it. Like they view it like, well, I'm not totally fluent, so I can't speak it. But
Mm.
no, I can understand you, right? So you're doing okay. But a lot of people here do know how to speak English. Not all, but a lot do.
But you said it was one of the barriers to making friends. Is it
Yeah.
is it that people are not welcoming or is it that
Culturally it's different. So my friend circle is like expats. Um, it is so people from America or from somewhere else, right? They've immigrated from somewhere else. And so it's them. It is being friends with a person here in France is difficult because the language. It's like if they feel like, number one, culturally, as Americans, let me back up. As Americans, we will go to Target or go whatever store, meet somebody in the bathroom. This is our friend, or whatever. They don't do that here. Friendships
right?
take a long time to cultivate, right? We're friends with people on a very surface level. So here, people take longer to be friends, but when you are a friend, you are a friend. Now, I do have some French friends here, but it's very difficult. And a lot of that is because I can't have the conversations with them that I would like to have, right? If I'm struggling to speak French and they're like, I don't want to be friends with her. You know what I'm trying to say? Because we're having a hard time communicating.
Yeah.
It's just a barrier. It's a barrier. Plus the cultural barriers too, in that the French culture is not as open as American culture is in terms of friendships. So
Mm.
it's cultural differences at play.
But I imagine that makes dating difficult too, because the men I've tried to date who there's been like a language barrier, it's like we really can't connect more than surface level just because we can't have conversations. Like if you're somebody who
Yeah.
conversationalist, like if you like banter,
Yeah,
witticism,
yeah.
stuff like that, you really can't connect
It's
at the same level if you don't have the language.
it's difficult, but people do it all the time,
Hmm.
and it just depends on the person, right? So my ex, I mean, he is like he was learning English, and he was learning English, so we there was a language barrier there to begin with, but it depends on the person and honestly how well they like you.
Mm.
It just does, because there are plenty of people, you talk to some people and they're like, no, I don't want to deal with it. Other people are patient. Depends on how well they like you and how well they if they wanted to, to have a friendship or relationship with you.
Mm.
Does it make dating harder? Yes, it does. There are so many things that, like, I can only Google Translate so much, right?
Right.
So, you know, so it does make dating more difficult. Yes. Is it impossible? No. When I look at it in terms of, like, there are people who 50, 60, 40 years ago, whatever, have married people and they both did not speak the language, right? Or like one person did not speak the language of the other person and they married. At some point, somebody has to become fluent, right? So it depends on the person. It really does. And their level of commitment towards you.
But I could also see how that would be different in friendship because it's like, how much do I really want to give? Especially being an adult, it's hard for me to maintain friendships with people who speak my language.
Exactly. It's from a friendship perspective, right? It's extra
Right.
work. So it's, oh,
Hmm.
this girl, here this girl come, here this woman come talking to me. I can barely understand her. She can't understand me, right? Or maybe they can understand me, but they can't. Maybe they do speak English, but it's too much of a struggle. I can be friends with this person over here and talk to her with no problem. So I've had that, unfortunately, had that happen as well. So it's a challenge. I mean, people get to choose who they want to be friends with.
Yeah, that's fair. And like your friend, your expat community friends, how did you end up meeting them?
Actually, through a group on Facebook and WhatsApp. So through, like, social media, is how I met them, and we don't really have events anymore, but we used to have regular events, and it was a good way to kind of get out and meet people. It's always like, when people come here, I love it because people come to Paris, and this is a place where people want to come, and I'm always like, let me know when you come, and I love that. But it's nothing like us being here. It's nothing like it. Like, nothing like it at all. So I love it when other, like, Black Americans are here. I can always tell us every single time, we bring a vibe. We are a vibe, right? And so I love to be able to, as much as I'm learning, working on learning and improving my French, it feels like a piece of home whenever somebody from the U.S. comes here.
Yeah, I get that because you just miss, like, we have a culture, like it's our culture. You miss our
We,
culture, so
it's
sometimes
exactly.
it's just nice.
Yeah,
to-
I miss our culture, and although, again, Paris is an incredibly Black city, you just have to know where to go and what to do. Um, it still is, it's different, right? In terms of, there are some, like, Black American food spots, and places. There are times that, like, I just want my, like, over the New Year, I wanted to have my black eyed peas and collard greens.
Yes.
Okay, I can't get no black eyed peas here. All right, collard greens, it's hard for me to find those too. So there are times that I just want those certain comfort foods. I want that macaroni and cheese. There are so many varieties of cheeses here, but you would not put them in
Right.
macaroni. Okay,
Right.
and I'm trying to figure out, like, what is the equivalent to Munster, and there's Gouda, but, like, this name is not matching up. So, what kind of cheese do I put? It's all of that stuff. I can't find some of the same things. And I guess that's part of the whole process, right? I shouldn't be able to find all of the same things, but it's about kind of modifying. But back to your point, yeah, I mean, I love your question. I love to, when we're here, I love to be just in the environment of us,
Yeah,
because, again, we're a whole vibe.
we're a vibe. Anasa says, "Love this conversation. Thanks, girl. With dating, have you tried finding common interests like art or cooking or biking? Just do lots of that. That actually seems nice. I guess because you don't really have to talk. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Art is one of my passions, right? Like, yeah, that's how it usually works. Like along the same things that you like, because those are going to be there regardless. If we don't like the same things, we don't have to speak the same language. It's not going to probably work or whatever. So yeah, looking at what common shared mutual interests and
Mhm.
what we have in common.
Yeah, definitely. And I always like dates where you do an activity. I feel like
Yeah.
that's always fun because you can see how they problem solve. Y'all can collaborate together, stuff like that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Um, what are some things you wish you knew before moving to France?
I wish I perhaps thought a little bit more about the culture in terms of, even though I had came here a lot, it's different when you're a tourist versus when you're actually living here.
Mm,
So a big cultural adjustment. I don't think that's something, I don't know if I could really prepare for that. Like you can't prepare for that unless you're here. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's going to be different. I think I was so focused on the, where my stuff is going to go, getting everything together, what am I bringing with me, having everything, but the cultural stuff is important, and building a community is important too, because as a person, when you leave your home country to go somewhere else, it's a natural feeling to feel like a little lonely or homesick, even though all the stuff that we face coming from where we come from, you still you crave the familiar.
mm, yeah. So you do get homesick. When was the
I
last
do.
time you were home?
I was home in November. I was home for the election. Yeah, I was home for the election. So, um, I was home for the election. That first year, I came home like 4 times that first year. It was a lot. It was probably way too much. I should have spaced it out.
Mm,
And then it took a year for me to get back home. So it's like the first year probably was too much going back, but frequent visits do help. And my children are there, so I'm always going to come back, right? But yeah, I recommend people, if you can get back like at least once or twice a year, more than once a year, like 2 or 3 times a year ideally.
yeah, that makes sense. Chris has a question. Hi, Chris. Is France your final home or are you still considering other countries?
I am open. I'm open. So I will share this. I am in tech. And so I was laid off from my job in February of last year. It's almost been, it would be a year in a couple days, right? So I've had to think about, okay, do I go back? Do I stay, or do I go somewhere else?
Mm,
For me right now, because my expenses here are lower, the challenge is my expenses are lower, but I came to France on a U.S. salary for with a U.S. Employer. So yes, I can get a job easy in the U.S. But I'm looking at, okay, what am I quote unquote giving up? My plan is to get a 5-year residency card here. So that way I have my 5-year residency. I will be able to kind of move a little bit differently. And at that point I can figure out, like, I've only got a few more years until I get to that point. So I can figure out, do I want to stay here and get maybe a 10-year residency or citizenship? If you had asked me this 6 months ago, I would say no. I'm always going to keep my U.S. citizenship, but I would have told you back then, no, I don't think. I just think I'll be a resident. The way I'm feeling now is that I may need to get that citizenship when I can, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. So
that's a fair answer. That's a fair answer. Um,
yeah, and I'm about also other places. So it's like, okay, I can get the. It's nothing. You can get different ones. Benin has a just announced, like, this week, they've got a passport program, right? And they're rolling it out for descendants of slavery in the U.S., right? And so all you have to do is prove that you have a Benin you have some of this heritage, like through a DNA test, which I already have that, and you'll get a passport. The thing with Benin is that it is a relatively passport friendly country. So combined with your US passport, you can go to Cuba much easier than you can on your US passport. You can go to like Hong Kong, Singapore. There are a few other countries that where travel is a little bit easier. So I'm looking at like Costa Rica. If Mexico had not changed their requirements, I would have definitely probably have done Mexico, and I still may. But I'm looking strategically. I'm not trying to collect them like Monopoly cards, but I don't think it's really a bad. I'm just saying I don't think it's a
Right.
bad idea right now. I can have some options. I mean, I need options. So I have this one. Where else do I want to go?
So your French visa isn't dependent on whether or not you have money coming in?
It is. It is. So there's some pressure there. It is because to get to qualify for your visa, you have to have a certain amount in savings um, to get it. So yes, there definitely is some pressure there. They want to be able to make sure that you make the minimum wage of a French employee, which is about they changed it for 2025. I want to say it's like maybe 1900 USD per month or something like
Huh?
that.
Oh,
Yeah, 19. It's not a lot. It's not a
listen.
lot. This is why I keep telling people. I'm like, do if you, especially if you have a remote job or remote income or
Well,
business or
I'm
whatever,
coming. I'm coming.
if you're making more than that, now you have to. So remember, they want to see that you have a certain amount of money coming in a month, and or
Hmm.
I think like 19,000 in savings or so in savings. So they want to be able to make sure you can support yourself and that you will not be relying on them to support you. That's because this is a social friendly country here. But they need to make sure you can pay your rent and all that good stuff. So it does not cost a lot to live here. You just have to meet certain requirements and yeah.
Would you consider, okay, it's a two-pronged question. Does your
Mhm.
current visa allow you to work in France, like with a French employer? And would you consider getting a French job there?
My current visa does not allow me to work for a French employer, so that's the downside. I have a tourist visa, which is the easiest to get, right? They pretty much give it to you, at least for the first year, the initial one. Um, but the downside is that I can't work for a French employer. Before, that was not an issue because U.S. salaries are higher than French salaries, right? It took me a long time to wrap my mind around that. The difference is that there's job security here and it's not in the US. As and I'm saying this is the person who got the layoff in tech. All right. And the tech market is job market is horrible still. So for me, I'm in the process of changing my visa because I need a French client. If I have a French client, I can change my visa for one that will allow me to have that. So as
Mhm.
soon as I get the client, I'm changing my visa. That takes like 6 months. My visa is currently under review as of this moment. They're a little bit late, but yes, currently under review. So we're gonna pray about that one. But um, um, you do have to go in looking kind of long term. You know, how do you want to? How will you support yourself? And do you meet the financial requirements you need to be able to get the visa here?
Mhm. And how long, I'm not sure if you said this, how long is your current tourist visa? How long does it last before you had to renew?
So it lasts 1 year.
Okay.
They're renewed annually. So I'm on year 3 of my renewal. So for year 5 renewal, that is when I will apply for the 5-year residency. At that point, I also have to pass a language exam. So I have to be more fluent than what I am. So
All right, you got 2 years then.
yeah, I got to listen. I'm sorry. Listen, I've already started. Yeah, private lessons, all that stuff because This language is hard to learn. It's hard to understand. I can from a I can understand it reading it, but when they're speaking it, I'm just like, okay, it's difficult. But I'm moving ahead, moving forward. I have to pass a basic level, a baseline level.
Okay. If you guys have any questions, I'm trying to y'all doing a lot of talking in the in the comment section. So if I miss your comment, I don't charge it to my heart. Um, so what does your daily life in Paris look like then?
Oh, my daily
You
life.
going to?
Let's see. So daily life is kind of like I get up, I may go to the boulangerie, which is like the cafe or whatever. Um, and I have a friend that I meet there. She's a French friend, and so she talks to me in French for the most part, like a mix of French and English, but mainly French. So I kind of, try to work on my French. And then I have private lessons. So it just depends on what I'm doing for the day. Usually I go to the boulangerie, get my day started. I'm looking like for client work, doing content creation, all the other stuff I'm doing, side projects, working on that. The thing I love about France is that the culture is one in which they prioritize meeting with friends, they prioritize going to cafes, they prioritize arts and culture. So I find that having moved, I know at one point maybe I was too much, my work life balance was off, and most Americans' work life balance is off. When you come here, it's like you see that people prioritize having a good meal. Like your phone is not, it's frowned upon if you're using your phone at the dinner table because you're not enjoying your meal. If you eat at a restaurant and you don't eat your meal, they look at you like, what was a problem? Like, what, you didn't eat your meal? Why not? So it's just very different culturally. And so I find that here I take the time to do things that I love and enjoy. I'm always going to museums. Yesterday I went to a video exhibit of photographer Gordon Parks here in Paris at Josephine Baker's cabaret, a club that she once owned. So I'm always doing things. Again, I love being around us, so I'm always going to activities. I dance, so I'm always doing that. I find that I make more time for things that I actually enjoy here. Life is not about just work. It is true what they say, like in the US, I feel like, the live to work, versus the work to live. It definitely is not like that here. I find that as a culture, there's more enjoyment of your recreational activities, of what you're doing to enjoy yourself. It's not just about work.
Mm. You get the chance to kind of slow down and enjoy life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been good for me. It's been good for me to slow down as somebody who has, worked multiple jobs at once, you know, working a job, running a business, all of that stuff. Like, business with 28 employees while working full time. It's a lot, right? So this has kind of forced me to slow down and think about things differently and just kind of tweak how I do things.
Mm. Yeah. A narcissist, a narcissist, I struggled with this in Eastern Europe. The people I was visiting were like, sit down, chill out. I also struggle
Yes.
with this. I
Yes.
the Ivorian I was dating. So we met in Germany and we took a road trip into France and we rode up to Paris. And so um I remember that morning I was like, we have to get on the road. Let's go. Let's
Yep.
grab the coffees. We'll
Yep.
eat in the car. We'll drink in the car. And
Yep.
he was like, we have time for breakfast. Like
Yes.
we sit and we enjoy breakfast. Okay. Paris is not
And
going
we eat
anywhere.
together.
He was
And we eat together. So
like,
if you dated an Ivorian man, I know one thing he's gonna do is feed you, and he's gonna want to eat with you, right?
right, right.
He's going to want to eat with you, and he will not eat without you. So yeah, it's totally different culturally. You have time to enjoy your meal. This whole concept of like drive through
Yeah.
doesn't really. exist here. You go to Starbucks, there are Starbucks here, but you're not going to drive up to Starbucks. Like, you can go to the to go window, but this whole concept of just like, convenience is different.
Yeah, no, we sit down and we have a meal and we enjoy
Mhm.
our morning, and then we
Yes,
do whatever we need to do. There is no eating and moving. Why are we moving and eating?
exactly. Exactly. Because I used to stand up to eat. I didn't even realize how it was
Yeah.
like a habit. Just being, just being a mom, doing whatever, standing up and eating. Like, no, that's not how you enjoy you're not enjoying your food that way. You're just not. You're eating, it's like eating on the go. I'm in the kitchen, but I'm standing eating. No, sit down, enjoy your food.
Sit down, enjoy your food.
Right. Enjoy
Stop
your
playing on
food.
your phone. Like, stop playing on your phone.
Exactly. Because it's considered, I didn't know that until he told me that it's considered rude. And I'm like, oh, is it? And he's like, yeah, it's rude to be on your phone. And I'm
Mhm.
like, just, I mean, I know for a formal dinner, but I'm like, just when I'm sitting here with you, he's like, yeah, it's not, French culture considers that to be rude
Because you're
because
not present.
you're not present. I'm
You're
not
not present.
present.
Mhm.
I'm not present.
Yeah. I think that's it's crazy because I think culturally we're doing things we like I said before, we don't even realize that
We don't.
it's a problem. It's just
We
we've gotten
don't
so used to doing things like this. It's just
because we've always done it that way,
yeah, we've
right?
always done it that way. And even like when you said
Mhm.
about work life balance, I think in the US too, like our there is no respect for breaks. There is no respect for taking a lunch. Y- People
Literally.
work and eat all the time. Like I can't tell you how many meetings I've been on when people are like, "Excuse me, I'm just trying to eat my lunch." It would never happen. That would
It would
never
happen
happen abroad.
here. It would never happen here. They will be upset if you eat at your desk. It is not a thing for you to eat at your desk. When I go to the park near my house within walking distance during the summertime, you see people who clearly have work clothes on at the park eating with their colleagues, right? Eating lunch.
Mm.
Everyone's eating lunch. This whole concept of like working through exhaustion that is common in the US, that doesn't happen here. Does
Yeah.
not, I mean, it's not um encouraged, right? It's not encouraged. So you are encouraged to take breaks. um Today's a prime example. There's a holiday on Monday. I kind of forgot about it, but on Sundays things close here regardless, right? But when there's a holiday on a Monday, things really close. So I didn't go to the grocery store, and so I walked to the grocery store and it was closed, and I'm like, what's going on? And it's, yeah, they will close. You come to Paris in August, everyone is gone. They're on vacation, they're on holiday. These folks, they have 6 weeks minimum vacation.
Right.
Minimum. You do not bug them on their vacation. You do not email them on their vacation. You will not get a response. So it's very different culturally. I just feel like in America it's like, okay, I'm on vacation but I'm still working. No, they don't do that here.
No, the don't even get me started on American PTO versus other countries. Like it's insane. People
Exactly.
people are like, "What, 2 weeks? 2 weeks?"
And we're afraid to take the 2 weeks. We're like,
And
oh,
we're
if I
afraid
take
to
these
take our
two
2 weeks.
weeks, they might get rid of me. I don't know. I mean, it's
No.
ridiculous.
Well, I
It's
think
ridiculous.
also like other countries, so like I know for a fact the UK, they have it built into their legislation. You can't just fire people over there. Like you have
Exactly.
to there has to be a process in place. And likewise though, when you're leaving a job, you can't just quit. So like, it's bad form, but theoretically in the US, you could just be like, "Okay, girl, bye. I quit." but but in countries like the UK, you have to give them proper notice so they can find
Notice.
your replacement. But likewise, if they're gonna fire you, they're not firing you. What is it called? Fire? No, not fire. What's it called when they can just let you go? Um,
Oh, at will, like at will,
yeah,
or
yeah,
right
yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah, right to work or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not like that over there. So they have to give you proper notice as well when they're gonna let you go. And they're paying you during this time. They're not just gonna fire you one day. Um, so
Eh,
just
yeah.
It's set
I
up
mean, here
differently
they
in
have
other
these long-term employment contracts called CDDs
countries.
and or CDIs, and you will basically not get fired, like unless you totally whatever. It's like having I mean, like almost like having a government job, how government jobs used to be, right? Where it would be very difficult for you to get fired. It's like that here. If you have a CDD or a CDI, that's a stable job. You are not going to lose that job unless you totally just are out of bounds.
Mhm. Yeah, Nomadic Islander says, I love an effective immediately on my resignation letter.
I'm
Listen,
leaving right now,
feel
at this moment,
empowered to say
right
effective immediately.
at this moment, right. I'm sorry, I got to
Exactly.
get my charger. I'm sorry.
No,
At this moment,
we're gonna let
yeah, you're leaving
at this
immediately,
moment,
right?
immediately.
Right. See, I'm okay with that concept because at least I feel like you're giving me my time, right? I'm giving you your time. I'm okay with that.
This is something I wanted to talk to you about too. Anasa says that's why the French protest hard to keep their social programs in place. So back in back in 2023, I actually didn't stay in Paris long term because I was concerned about the protests that were going on. What was that like being on ground?
It wasn't as bad as the U.S. media made it out to be, honestly.
Crazy. I was in the UK. The UK media also made it look really bad.
I mean, they protested. It was inconvenient. Train travel was messed up. The French love to protest. They have a history of protest. The one thing they will do is protest.
Listen, guillotine.
I wish I exactly. So I wish sometimes that there are things I think we can learn, right? Like I think from their cultural standpoint, they don't understand why we're going for the things we're quote unquote going for the things that we're going for because they would burn Paris down 3 times if they tried any of this stuff. Like when they were talking about raising the retirement age by 2 years,
Hmm.
literally, I'm sorry, literally, I'm all kind of difficulties here. Hold on one second. Literally, they had got a pile of horse manure and dropped it off at the mansion of the president. So they don't play.
No, but that's the kind of energy we need here in the US. Like our protests really don't go anywhere. We need to really well, I'm not gonna be protesting nothing. I'm gonna leave. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying, y'all need to get out in the not just get out in the streets. We need to really do something to make change happen. Because it feels like when we protest, nothing happens. It's all like performative.
Yeah, that's the thing. We that's the concept, right? We get upset and then it just goes nowhere, right? Like culturally, it just goes nowhere. So I will give them credit. They are about that protest life for real.
Yeah, definitely. And but I wanted to touch on like the safety of it. So you were saying it wasn't as bad as it was in the media, but have you ever felt like, okay, this city is not as safe as I thought it was because of the protesting?
No, I mean, I feel like American media always, whenever there's a problem over here, is hyped up. It
Mm.
is not usually as bad as what they claim it to be. I feel like it's a distraction technique because literally I would have people calling me like, "Oh, are you okay? Are you all right?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, girl, I'm fine. Like, y'all need to worry about y'all over there. Like,
Right.
honestly." So, yeah.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So yeah, listen, so we have a different perception of it because we're not there on the ground, but actually on the ground it's not as scary. You're not walking around,
No.
I don't know.
No.
Have you ever
No.
felt
I mean, have I ever felt unsafe?
unsafe just in general?
No. I have not ever felt unsafe in general. And my life here is like I will catch the train late, I will walk home late from the train. I live like a block away. I don't move the same as I would move in Atlanta or Detroit. Okay.
Mhm.
The crime level is not the same. Overall, I feel safe. It is, again, I wouldn't move the same way in Atlanta or Detroit, but um, it's I don't have the threat of gun violence here. I don't have the threat of like a mass shooting here. Doesn't mean things don't happen. It's like anywhere else. There is crime, but the crime rate is so different than what it is in the US.
Mm, yeah. Chris
So,
says, I feel like the US doesn't want us to know other countries have better quality of life than here.
absolutely. I agree. Look at the past few weeks in the conversations, even like around China and Red Note with the Red Note app, right? And people were like, "Oh, it costs how much to live in Beijing? It costs how much to live, a studio for 500 a month." Like there's a certain amount of propaganda involved and she's right. Like folks want the general perception to be that America is all that there is. And if you've traveled abroad and if you've been other places, you know that it's not that's not true.
Yeah, definitely. Um, okay, we got so far off topic. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. You gonna have to come back to the channel. Like you're just going.
Absolutely. Thank you. I would love to come back. Thank you.
I have like a half a page of questions that we did not even touch on, and more on my
Ah,
sticky note. And I don't want to keep you here all day. So, my last question. So, if anybody's watching this video and they're thinking about relocating to Paris, what would you say to them? What advice would you have?
I would say, do it with an open mind. Come here, see if you like it, see if it resonates with you, and just to do it. I like anything else. I feel like if you move somewhere and you don't like it, you can move back.
Yeah,
You can move back. You can move in stages like I did. You can move back. If we can move around. If you can go to you can come here to France. If you don't like France, you may like Portugal. You may say, I know I want to go to Ghana. You may want to go to South Africa. Like the world is huge. And I don't think that we should limit ourselves.
yeah. Don't limit yourself.
Yeah, don't limit.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Um,
Thank you.
you have to come back. You have to come back. I don't care if you're available or not. We're gonna find a time. We're gonna find a time.
Oh,
We're gonna come back down to the channel. Um, Anybody watching this video, whether you're watching right now or you're catching the replay, like the video, click the notification button so you know when I go live. And then drop down in the comment section any questions that you want to ask Tenisha that maybe you missed this conversation and you want her to cover the next time she comes on the channel. Let me know. What else? We have some great updates happening for the channel, so stay abreast. Join my newsletter. Click in the description. I'm getting tired. Click in the description of this video and join my newsletter. I have, if you want to follow Tanisha's YouTube channel, I have a link to that in the description of this video and also in the comment section. And yeah, y'all stay black out there. Bye.